Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, Adventuring in Africa, a recap of 2022, presented by Nat Hab Expedition Leader, Richard de Gouveia. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you all for joining me today. It has been an age since I sat staring at my computer and talking to people I don't see on the other side. And the reason for this is because 2022 was a spectacular year for travel. I was in the field for around 138 days last year, so it was a busy year, which also means that there are a lot of highlights we got to get through. Now, for those who haven't been on one of my webinars before, I'm Richard. I have been a Nat Hab guide. This is my 9th year of guiding with Nat Hab. Love the company, love the places we get to visit, and I'm really excited to be connected to you guys. Most of my areas are in Africa, and I do the whole of Africa, and we'll touch on a few of those spaces as we go along. Now, 2022, I think, was the true get back to travel year after our experiences with COVID. And there were some really exciting things that happened. And my year started off so spectacularly when I got an email from Nat Hab saying that there was a space on a Galapagos trip, and all we had to do was get ourselves there and we would have space on the boats. And I looked at my wife and I said to her, well, Jen, this is so cool. We haven't seen one of these in ages. Look at what's happening. She's like, but that's a dream for you. You better get on and go and see if you can do that. I'm going to check flights. So she started checking flights, and before I knew it, it was 5 days later, I was at the airport and getting onto a plane to get to the Galapagos. And this was an absolute dream trip. This was our boat and one of the dinghies that we used to get around. And it was just so comfortable. I haven't traveled like that. It's so weird to be on the other side of the travel. I remember my guide, Josie, was standing and she was giving the orientation briefing, and I sort of shuffled in next to her like I was working. And then I realized, no, this is not me. It's not my job. I'm going off. And I just loved the opportunities to be under the water and see different things and watch evolution and how it's changed things from a completely different perspective. Seeing blue-footed boobies flying around and taking off and nesting was unbelievable. Being so close to sea lions, and just the fact that the animals absolutely had no fear of us and just wanted to play, if anything else. Here's one of them coming up. I mean, they were literally bumping our masks as we were under the water having a play. Having Gustavo and Josie share their expertise and their incredible knowledge with us about all of the different animals and these marine iguanas. These guys look particularly prehistoric, and again, you're stepping over them, you've got to move around. And that just blew my mind. It was one of those really beautiful experiences that will stick with me for the rest of my life, to the point that I went, oh my goodness, all I want to do is take my family there. I just want to take my boys there when they're old enough. And my eldest son, Josh, who's now 6 years old, has just sort of got his head around swimming and putting his face under the water. And it just brings so much joy. I can't wait to take him to a place like this and blow his mind with the natural beauty and the incredible wildlife. And one of the big things that really got to me about the Galapagos were all of these lava flows, and walking on where lava flowed was just mind-blowing. Rob and I were having a discussion earlier, and him and his wife had been to Hawaii and they saw an active lava flow. And one day I want to safely view a lava flow. So that was some of the beauty, and that was a kickstart to what was a magical, insane, beautiful year. The next big highlight that really came about was a private trip we did with Nat Hab. 4 guests came to join me, and we did a custom trip around South Africa, doing different parts of South Africa and doing something different. And the deeper I go into safari, the more I'm looking at how we can actively get into conservation. And we did a rhino darting where we darted 2 rhinos. And I'm going to play a video for you, and you guys can watch through that, and I'll explain my feelings a little bit later. But this was a massive, massive highlight. So enjoy this. Right, there we go. It's going to go down.
Rhino is just really a large horse. So we've been treating it as a large horse, antibiotic-wise, painkiller-wise, whatever-wise, for the last 10 years, 15 years. We've now realized that a rhino is a mixture between a rhino, a cow, and a horse.
Why do they have to do that? Because they're so heavy, when they lie on their legs with their legs totally underneath them, they cut off the blood supply to the hind limbs. And if they stay like that for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes they don't get up again. So you've got to just make sure that the legs are well positioned. And they're so heavy, you know. You've got any number that we can use with a 10. We'll turn that into a big 10.
Rhinos' ears are notched in different places, which allocate them a specific number. This allows us to identify different rhinos at different times and monitor their progress as we move along through their lifespan.
So when they drill in, we'll try and catch some of the rhino tips.
Yeah, I got it.
So not only are they drilling in to take a little horn sample, they're going to be inserting a microchip. That microchip doesn't have the longest lifespan. As the horn's natural growth comes in, it compresses that chip and it will crush it eventually. So they have to be replaced as we go.
Like clipping your nails.
I mean, when you dehorn them, you remove the whole horn with a chainsaw. Amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So you want to just give 1 or 2 of those strands a firm tug.
1 or 2?
Oh, yeah. You don't need a whole bunch, just a couple. I'm going to have to give it quite a tug. Don't worry, you can't feel it.
Absolutely brilliant.
So the idea behind all of these DNA samples that we're taking now, is all of this goes to feed into a database, a national rhino database, whereby we've got all of the information of all of the rhinos. Well, we want all the rhinos in the country to have their DNA on record, which just helps us to make successful convictions after. So if a folks get information of a horn, we can track that back to the animal at a different property, and we can have a more compelling case to put that person behind bars.
Rhinos are no longer put to sleep when darted. They're merely paralyzed for the treatment. This improves the likelihood of less going wrong during the treatment itself. Rhinos are fitted with a radio collar that goes around the ankle. This radio collar has artificial intelligence built into it, which learns the behaviors of the rhino, where they walk, how they move, and should this behavior change in some way, it will notify the anti-poaching units and the reserve management so that they can follow up on these animals. This will deter poachers from coming in and also allows them to be able to follow up on the health and find out the movements of the rhino, furthering research and understanding of these beautiful creatures. So that was an amazing experience. And for the guests, it was also one of those mind-blowing experiences where you're part of it. It's not just an activity that you do and you watch from the side. You're in it. You could see the guests collecting horn samples, collecting DNA samples, being part of this whole thing. Rex was busy trying to push the rhino over and help get the blood flow back to the legs. And it's a really interactive experience. So being in that and watching that and knowing that we're actively giving back to conservation was definitely a major highlight of my trip, of my year. Now, the desert is always amazing. And another great thing that really sticks in my head about 2022 was our visit to Namibia and to Sossusvlei specifically. And this was on the new Photo Pro Southern Africa Photo Pro trip, or Botswana Photo Pro trip. And we basically went through Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. Small group, there were 6 of us, and we explored these 2 wildernesses over 19 days. And it was this real intense photographic, beautiful trip where we all learned from varying levels how to capture the magic of these spaces. So this is a place called Dead Vlei. A vlei is a valley or a wetland, and this was previously where the Sossus River used to flow, and this used to flood, but the dunes came in and blew in and sealed this off. And because it's so dry here, these trees have been petrified and are thousands of years old and still standing. Really beautiful. And we were lucky that this cloud cover came in, so it created a very different feel in the desert to have clouds and create very different photos. Here's one of the oryx in the middle of the dunes. The dunes are this beautiful red color, and it's just a magical thing. But the one thing that stuck with me was walking out of Sossusvlei on the one day. We were blessed with the opportunity where there was not a breath of wind. There were no other people besides our group there, which is, I've never seen it like that. It was just us, and it was silent. And when I say silent, I mean, I thought that my breath was keeping the world awake because it was so loud compared to absolutely zero other noise that was going on around. It was just quiet. And that really was so deafening and so beautiful and wonderful. I can't even explain how much I enjoyed that feeling. So that was my second highlight, or third highlight of the year. And this Photo Pro trip had a lot of other things that we got to do that were a little outside of the normal realm, where some of the trips will do chopper flips. We did 2 chopper flips where the doors are open. So I'm going to show you what the chopper looks like. So you can see there's no doors. It's great for photography. We were out early. We were waiting for our turn because the group had to be split in two in order to make sure that everyone had a chopper flip, because there's only 3 people in the chopper. So 3 went up, then they came back, and then we went up. And we were the first ones to go up this morning on the second flight of the trip. And the lions were right there. And the pilot didn't know that. We'd gone out on a little drive. He parked his plane, parked the helicopter, and started taking the doors off, because he doesn't fly all the way from Maun where the planes are situated with the doors off. So he's taking the doors off and trying to move them off. And the next thing, a lioness pops up ahead, and we arrive, we pick him up, we put him in the vehicle. And this lioness comes walking straight past the helicopter. A male lion walked straight past the helicopter. And that was the start to the chopper flip. On that flight alone, we got to see 3 different sets of lions. But it was so beautiful photographically because of the long shadows. It was early morning, and it provided this real mystique to the flight, and these long shadows that you can see that make for really beautiful photos as we were flying overhead. The pilot was spectacular. Again, here some impala chasing each other, busy rutting, and a big male chasing a younger male. And these big shadows afterwards, they almost look like Bushman paintings in my head. That's what I see. And it was just really magical to be up there. This big old elephant bull gave us the beady eye and was like, yeah, you come down here. You come give me one. I'm ready. But we also bumped into a lion and a lioness hunting buffalo in the middle of the Okavango Delta, unperturbed by us. I mean, this guy obviously looked up to check what the chopper was doing, but was not worried. She was very focused on the buffalo in general, so that was quite amazing to see. And the buffalo were just cruising along without a care in the world, not knowing that they were in grave danger. So going up and seeing the Delta, and always a different perspective, is just so beautiful to be part of. Now, there's always certain sightings and certain moments within a year that really provide for outstanding thought processes. My first and highlight of the lot was finding the shoe bull in Uganda. Now, normally these guys are stuck in the Edward Flats, which is deep in Lake Edwards areas and around Lake Victoria. And we don't get a lot of opportunity to see them. And on the one day we were coming into Ishasha, which is a beautiful part of Uganda, most famous for its tree climbing lions. And this is a very small safari park that bridges the chimpanzees and the gorillas. It's this wonderful in-between moment. And we got to Ishasha, and they'd said that there had been this young shoe bull who had moved into the wetland areas because there'd been quite a bit of rain around, and that there was a possibility that we could see it. So off we went looking for everything, and we found this guy. And I went marching off into the wetlands to go photograph my first shoe bull. And it's a huge bird. I mean, it stands like 3.5 feet tall, maybe 4 feet tall. It's really beautiful. And this was me walking in, me excitedly walking out. And then it felt like shoe bull heaven, because the following trip, I arrived in Uganda straight after my 40th birthday. It was on my birthday itself that we got there, and I went with the guests to go see the shoe bulls in Lake Victoria's swamps, which I haven't had much chance to do because there's always so much admin before a trip starts. So you're trying to get everything ready for the trip. In this case, everything was well sorted. I went out and we saw this shoe bull chick that was still sitting on the nest. Mom was a little bit away, but a really beautiful sight of what looks like an absolutely prehistoric bird. So that was a massive tick on my birding list and a big tick for the year 2022. We also got to see, while we were out there, a lion moving across the delta. And cats in general are, or the big cats, are very scared of water, in Africa at least. Tigers, no problems. Jaguars, no problems. They're in the water, they love to swim, bring it on. But lions will stare at it, they'll snarl at it. But the ones in the Okavango Delta, because of the flooding that occurs there, what happens is the rain falls in Angola sort of December, January, and then it flows all the way down the Okavango River and then floods the desert. And it used to flow all the way down to a place called the Machadi Pans, but a big tectonic shift shifted the rivers, shifted the land, and pushed this river down into the Kalahari Desert, where it now floods every winter in the non-rainy season. So you can see it's dry out here, but there's still water available. And this guy just went marching in. Beautiful male. He'd put on an absolute song and dance for us, and it was amazing to listen to his roar. And then he decided to go join the rest of his family and cross this little channel to get over. Our guide was amazing, and it got us into the perfect space, waiting for this moment where he would cross, and off he went. So here's a little video of that. Just such a unique, different sighting to have. We then had a very interesting moment, and in the same area that lion was, in around September time, sausage trees begin to flower. So this is a big sausage tree, and the flowers are very sweet, and the antelope love them. And because of this, leopard love to wait in the trees. And if you look carefully up in the top left-hand corner here, you will see a leopard standing statue still, waiting for something to come along. She'd been sleeping on a branch, and just as we thought nothing was going to happen, these two kudu then started coming up. It was quite exciting because at that point we're all waiting to see what's going on. And there's something that's really thrilling and amazing. You can even see this kudu's already got a beady eye looking up in the trees. They understand this. And these two kudus were walking up. She was poised in the tree and waiting, but trying to sit as still as a statue, because the other one at the back had actually noticed something. And they've learned to look up, because leopards fly in these areas and land on top of things. So it was just silent, and we all sat there with this tense wait. No one dared move. You can see the one backing out now because she's seen something that's not cool. The other one's almost oblivious, trying to see what the other one's focused in on. But back to feeding. And now I thought, it's game on. She's going under. There's a couple of flowers right under the tree. And then she moved slightly, and that kudu saw her. That bark you heard is their alarm call, and the gig was up. The leopard went hungry and started to move off to another tree, to another space to do that. And even though nothing really culminated out of the thing, and my bloodlust loves a little bit of action, it was such an intense moment to just sit there and know that anything could happen at this time. And then in Zimbabwe, when we stopped off there, we had the most amazing last day. traveling around Bwindi, we got to a camp which now jumps straight out of my brain, and it'll come to me just now. And we started exploring around there. And what this camp is famous for is an underground hide. So we woke up, we came back from safari, we got to the lodge, everyone had got back to the rooms to sort of cool down and calm themselves. And within about an hour of being back, 500 buffalo rocked up at the waterhole just in front. So we went in to climb into the submerged hide in order to see what was happening. Elephants came in and greeted us. This is a pregnant female. You can actually see the baby sticking out on the sides here. Absolutely. And it's amazing to just be at that eye level and photographing from that very different space. It creates opportunities for very different photographs and moments that give us a different perspective. So from being up in a helicopter a few days earlier to now being almost underground and photographing things from feet up really creates different perspectives, especially when it comes to photographic stuff. And then the sunset and this dust that's created in Bwindi, which is also a very dry desert area that gets a lot of rain during summer, but during the winter it's very dry and the dust kicks in and you get these beautiful, beautiful orange sunsets. And the silhouettes and the reflections on the water were just mind-boggling. And I was in seventh heaven as a photographer, as a guide. It was the last full day. It was the cherry on the top to finish off an amazing, amazing, amazing trip. Now, whilst sightings are awesome, there are also moments that are different on safari. And this year seemed to be a year of wet safaris. I don't know why, but water was very much part of this year. And here are some of my highlights of that water. So let's go to Uganda. Welcome to Kibali Forest. We're in the rainforest. It's raining. Go figure it out. What a cool experience. We're now going to cruise through here to look for the chimps. It's a beautiful day. Thunderstorm overhead. We're all well prepared with ponchos, rain covers, all the rest, and we'll go see what the chimps are doing in this craziness. The rain's coming down harder and harder as we're going along. Just found some fresh chimpanzee dung, and hopefully they're not too far away. The rain doesn't bode well for them being on the ground. These chimps, because of the rain, are up in trees. So it goes. We use what we use, and we're going back to a fig tree now where we initially found them. There's some shouting from that side, so let's go see what they're doing. Yeah, they're coming down. Come with me, come with me. We managed to find them. Patience paid off. One of the males came down. He was cruising around. He put on a bit of a show for us, a yawn, just watching a young female in a tree that walked up. She was trying to get to him, a bit more afraid of us. Males are definitely more habituated in that way. And eventually she got around, he got around. They came together, quick mating session, and then off. Now the sun's out. It's a beautiful afternoon in the forest. It's wet, it smells amazing, the sounds are amazing, and we can head back towards the lodge. And I mean, we were taking cover for ages. Nothing was stopping that rain getting through into stuff. So even the best ponchos, raincoats in the world were not helping us at all. But it was an amazing experience, and it wouldn't be called a rainforest if it didn't rain. And it was just wonderful to experience it like that, and then still have one come down and be part of us, and so we could see it and really feel it. There was a lot of, I like to refer to it like kissing the frog to get the prince. This was definitely part of kissing the frog. It was very cool and just a unique experience. Another moment that we had on safari, and this was another private trip that I did with Nat Hab. One gentleman wanted to go out and do some photography, and we did 2 amazing camps in May, which should normally be a dry month. However, the weather had different thoughts for us. Some days we have good weather. Other days we're just getting wet. So those raindrops that day felt like golf balls. They were huge. We were being absolutely pelted, and it switched on in minutes. It was the craziest thought that you could be out of season, and we've had a lot of unseasonal rain around South Africa, but it did lead to quite a beautiful rainbow, which emerged as we got back to the lodge. It popped its head out, and it was absolutely beautiful. Another moment was back to Galapagos. Here's Andrea, who guides in Switzerland for us for Nat Hab, and him and I were privileged enough to go on this trip, and I couldn't resist. The 10-year-old in me wanted to jump off.
When you want, Richie. When you want. Yeah, I did.
I particularly enjoyed that. And on the first day when I saw that boat, literally the 10-year-old in me was going, do you think I can jump off there? I think I can. And I asked Josie, our guide, on the first day. She was like, I said, Josie, what are the chances I can jump off the top into the water? She says, yeah, sure. Just not here, because there's a lot of sharks here. So it's like, okay, you tell me when I'm safe, and I'll happily jump off at that point. There was a lot of unseasonal rain, or seasonal rain, but a lot of it in Uganda too. And this was our botanical gardens walk that normally goes on platforms that are raised above the water, but there was so much water that the platforms had just been sunken. And they'd given us these gumboots to wear so as not to wet our shoes or our feet. But that didn't work so well.
Let's just do this. We're gonna grab this boot. Oh, listen to that.
Gotta love it.
There was a lot of water, and here is Yvonne emptying out her shoe. It was a very, very fun experience. A lot of water involved, but very cool nonetheless. So getting wet was definitely one of my highlights. And then as it goes, I did a lot of gorilla tricks this year. I think I did 16, 17 gorilla tricks this year. So within that, we're going to have some close encounters. plenty close encounters in the vehicle, but there were moments that really stood out for me. And as guests, when we get into these amazing creatures, we are asked to keep our distance. We try and keep it at a level that is at least about 10 meters, so about 30 feet away from them. But that's often not always possible, and they're moving, they don't understand the distances, so we have to be conscious of that. And because of that, we wear masks. We ensure that we're protecting themselves or protecting the gorillas against any diseases that we have. These close-up opportunities also give me opportunities to get some pretty unique photos with wide-angle lenses from really low down. And if you look carefully in here, there's actually a little baby hanging onto the chest. Unfortunately, she didn't give me much more of a good look there. And again, nice opportunities when they walk past to get some great photographs. While we were out there, there were very cool moments where babies were playing. This was in Rwanda, and this little guy decided that he was going to come and investigate me. And when I travel there, I use a GoPro on my head. So here you can actually see with my wide angle lens just how close he was to me. And I moved back to ensure that I wasn't going to give him the chance to touch me, even though I would love it to happen and I'd love to give him a big squeeze and a hug. That's not always the best thing for them, and we keep our distance because of that. And then we had a moment, a really crazy moment. This big silverback, one of the blackbacks trying to climb on his back, and he came waltzing in. Now these forests are thick. There's nowhere to go. You cannot get out of the way. And Bob had a brush with death, but a very safe brush with death. And this big guy walked straight past him. Have some of that. That made Bob's whole trip, and it made mine too. It was definitely our best close encounter of the year when it comes to the gorillas. And then lastly, the last trip I did, Nat Hab, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen, Nat Hab have been doing a lot of new documentary style short films, trying to cover some conservation points, seeing different areas and create content to share with you guys so that you can also see these places if you don't get there. And under the amazing eye of Andrew Ackerman, who is Nat Hab's filmmaker and has done some incredible stuff and is just a wonderful human, he came to join me for a couple of weeks as we cruised around on my last trip of the year around Uganda and Rwanda. And this was really special. The reason being is because he came a couple of days early so that we could go into the forest in Kibale and do the chimps and get some footage without guests. And then we stayed on afterwards to do another trek in a different location. And having guests is always such a highlight because I get to teach you guys about the different things and show you these amazing places. But to be able to do it with Andrew was a different feel because I didn't have guests. I didn't have anyone to look after. We could concentrate on footage and just being present. And we did a chimp habituation that lasted 8 hours. We covered around 10 miles walking, And a lot of the time we were waiting for chimps to come out of the trees, and to be able to just lie down in the forest and just listen and not worry if a guest was needing me or anything else. I could just be present with the forest, was mind-boggling. And while we were out there, I was blessed with Andrew's tuition. And I got to learn so much about filmmaking and seeing all of this from a different side. And as a young adult, I created a dream board where I cut out pictures of what I wished to achieve and do and experience in my life. And one of those pictures, this was pre being a guide, was to create or be part of a nature documentary. And this ticked one of those bucket lists, because he took some of my footage, which will be used in Nat Hab stuff, and to create a documentary. Yes, a small one, but still nonetheless a tick on the list. And we had the most epic gorilla sightings for the filming. This was absolutely spectacular. These gorillas had come out into this open nettle field. I just fed and relaxed in the open. The light was perfect because there's a little cloud cover, so there wasn't harsh shadows. It was absolutely magnificent. We could keep our distance, which was recommended because that was the way it worked. And we were just part of these guys. It was absolutely amazing. So to learn this and now have the opportunity to share videos like this with you guys is a privilege. So this was my very little video I made just for this, with some of the newly built skills that I got from Andrew. So the last part of this journey and this filmmaking journey was to go back into Bwindi Impenetrable forest, which is quite possibly one of my favorite places on the whole planet. Its mystique and thickness and density and beauty is indescribable. And normally when we're doing these trips, we're trying to get the guests the shortest walks possible, so that the best or the weakest of the group will have a great time doing what they do. We don't get a lot of time in the forest. So as a last ditch, try and get some footage, just me and Andrew, we had gone back into Uganda and we went back to Bwindi, but to a different starting point to what we normally use. So it was a new experience for me. I was lucky that on this trip I'd reached 100 treks. My first trek in Rwanda was my 100th trek that I've done to the gorillas. And going into this forest for the first time, we drove up this mad steep hill, and we wouldn't send Nat Hab guests there, because even though the gorillas is marked as hard, this would be like beyond difficult for a lot of Nat Hab guests. We drove up to the top of this hill and we came back in, and it was beautiful. We moved at a pace. It was just Andrew and I and 2 guides, and we walked hard, and we walked up and down mountains, through valleys, through rivers, through the most beautiful vegetation I have seen in my life. It blew my mind. And then to get to the gorillas who are being habituated. Now, it takes about 2 years to habituate a family. If you're good, if they're good, if they accept that thing, about 2 years. And that's what we were taking part in, was this habituation. And as we walked into these spaces, the gorillas didn't want us, not didn't want us there, they didn't want us close. So they kept moving off. They kept a greater distance than probably 90 to 100 feet away from us, very, very skeptical of us. And the guides were a little worried about trying to get us close. And I just said to them, listen, guys, there's no rush. I've done this many times. I've had them walk past me, bump me, pull my pants, touch the guests, do all sorts of crazy things. Let's give them space. And if we respect them, they'll give us and show us something amazing. And it was exactly that. As time went on, and after an hour, which would normally be your cutoff point, they started to relax a little with us and got closer and closer, and we were able to approach and start getting photos and some video of them. Andrew walked around the corner and one baby was hidden behind a tree. It saw Andrew. It had a heart failure. The family came rushing in. It was so intense because it wasn't like the habituated groups that we normally see. And to have this real crazy moment where these gorillas are busy charging at you, and you're like, they aren't habituated. Are we going to get snapped in half? But they stopped and then again relaxed and went to sleep, and allowed us within probably 20 feet of them in this thick area. And we managed to find little windows, and the babies were playing, and the silverback was relaxed. It was about 2.5 to 3 hours into the trek. We were allowed to be there for 4 hours as an habituation trek. And at that point, they got up to start feeding again. And Andrew and I looked at each other and we were like, we're full. We've experienced it. They've led us into their world. It's now time to part. And that is where I'm going to leave this talk. And Rob, if there are any questions for me, I'd happily take them.
All right, Richard, thank you so much. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. All right, so let's get to some of those questions. First of all, wow, amazing photos. I am not the only one saying that. Everybody just, and the videos, we really appreciate you sharing those.
Thank you.
Let's see. So in the rain in Uganda, what is the tree with the massive roots that you are all taking shelter under?
That was a fig tree, and that's one of the primary food sources that the chimps utilize, and they're massive. I mean, they probably stretch 150 feet into the air, maybe more. Yeah, possibly more than that. I mean, they are huge trees, and they're so thick and dense that the chimps can't even use the main stem to climb up. They actually have to use the liana vines or smaller trees around to get to the top branches, then to feed on those figs. You can actually see the figs on the ground here, obviously a little pixelated, but these are all giant figs, probably the size of my fist, that were fallen on the ground.
Wow, amazing, just amazing. So let's see. Does the radio collar on the rhino's leg have a chance of getting caught? And can anyone maybe book a trip to see the rhino darting, or was that just a special experience?
Okay, so the collar on the foot has no impact on it whatsoever. You actually have to keep it loose because of the way they move, but it has zero impact on them. They've darted over 200 rhino there. They've been looking at what's happening. It has no impact, no negative impact on their behavior that we have been able to pick up. What is interesting about those collars, and I was saying it in the video, but for anyone that missed it, was that they have artificial intelligence learning within them. So if that rhino doesn't get up for an extended period of time, and it should, it will notify the lodge. If it runs, if it jumps, if it does something out of the ordinary, it will notify anti-poaching and the lodge and the reserve management so that they can go and follow up on that animal. It's quite incredible. And they use a system where there's beacons in the bush, and at any time they can pinpoint where any of these rhino are. It's quite spectacular. And this rhino darting is, while it is a special experience, it is not an exclusive experience. And yes, you can contact your adventure specialist. They can create a custom itinerary to Marataba to do this rhino booking. It is expensive, but just working it out, you can work your way into that and go see it and be part of it. And they will be redoing these rhinos for years and years to come because they have an incredible population, and it will be even rhinos that have been darted and collared might need new collars, might need to have their horns then tested and checked on size and growth, and all of this forms a research base. So yes, it is very possible, and Marataba is the lodge, and your adventure specialist will be able to help you get in touch and create these trips. I'll do it with you if you want. No problems. I'll have another highlight.
Everyone would love that, I'm sure. So a lot of the times we're seeing a lot of you folks are outside of the vehicles. Is that a normal part of some of these trips? A lot of the trips, I know they have to stay in the vehicles. I know a lot of the guests would love to get out and take a look around like that.
So it depends on the trip, and it depends on the spaces. So something like the Close Encounters, the gorillas are that's all on foot. So we'll get that that thought process. Galapagos, very much on foot, no vehicles. But stuff like the rhino darting, we're in the vehicles till the rhino is safe and has been darted with a derivative that is about 1,000 times stronger than fentanyl, in order to knock it out and at least paralyze it for that time. Namibia, there's quite a bit of walking out in these areas, so it depends where you're going. And as guides, we're trying to get you out of your vehicle, not when the lion is next to you, but when it's safe to do so, because we want you to be on the ground with it. We want you to experience it and to feel it. This shoebill, again, a little bit of special dispensation for me to go and take a photo, but we're very seldom out of the vehicle in those points. Any of these things here, the lion crossings and the leopard hunt, we were in vehicles. And then this, we were walked to the sunken hide by the guide with a rifle in order to get in there safely and not have any things. But most of our safari trips have some form of walking safari option. And it's beautiful to get out there and be on foot, even if you don't see the big animals, just to experience being out there on foot. Everything grows as soon as you're out of the vehicle.
Great, thank you for answering that. So do you know how a gorilla would choose a location to make a nest with just all that dense vegetation around? Any idea how he makes a choice?
So it is basically the silverback that makes that choice. As they're walking, he gets to a point where he goes, okay, cool, this is it. And what they do is they snap off branches inwards and then create the nests on the ground. So gorillas nest on the ground. They're too big to nest in trees. Chimps will nest in trees. So they just find the right trees that are close by, bend these things in and create these incredibly large nests that look like a bird nest, but they're for a chimp. So yeah, it's literally where the big man decides this is where we're sleeping, everyone makes a nest.
I got a couple of questions about camera and video gear. First of all, do you shoot your video with something other than a GoPro? And what would you recommend for me to shoot on a safari like this?
So I shoot on GoPro, I shoot on phone. Those are very easy to get around and use. Push the record button and go. But a lot of my now education is about shooting on mirrorless cameras. The Sonys are absolutely mind-boggling at what they can do and how well they hold focus. So most of the big stuff, I'm trying to get more and more video content. Photos will always be a base for me, but video is just such an interactive, cool thing to do, and it gives me something different to look at when I'm doing it. So depending on what your gear is, the latest cameras are going to be much better for filming than earlier cameras. So if you're looking to get into video, I would suggest starting to look at some of the newer released cameras, what's in your budget, how it works, and then start from there. They're pretty simple, but video is very in depth, and the time I spent with Andrew and him teaching me all about these different bits and pieces and how to do it correctly is a lot of work, but the juice is worth the squeeze, because when you can capture a moment that really explains what you were there and doing and feeling is really special.
So just how the heck do you keep your camera gear dry during the wet days?
That's the beauty of the gear that I have. It's all weather sealed and covered. So we can have covers, like rain covers over them. When it's really, really wet, they're packed away in the bag till I need it. I'll pull it out, take a few shots, put it back in order to try and keep it as dry as possible. But they're very well weather sealed, so they can handle a downpour. I've tested it on a few occasions.
Well, thank you for addressing that. Unfortunately, that's really going to be the last question that we do have time for today. So I'm going to throw it back to you for your closing comments.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. It's really nice to see you. There's going to be a couple more webinars that I'll be doing this month and next month before travel becomes crazy. So looking forward to those. And I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you, Nat Hab, for still keeping this possible and keeping us in contact with you guys. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you on a trip this year. Go well.
Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I would also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in information on how you could travel with Nat Hab, give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.